Okay. So in terms of, I'm going to go to theory practice before I go to professional development, because I've just been sort of talking about that. It's really important that if you want, or I think, if you want research-informed practice to happen, you have to start with experience first, and it has to be meaningful experience and meaningful to the mentee because of sort of guidelines and values of development. That is very individualized and it's very personal, so it can't come from the top down. It has to start with experience. You have to, I suppose, in old educational sort of understandings, you have to externalize before you internalize, right? So trying to get mentees to externalize their experience first in step one is really, really important. After that, you can fold into, not apply theory into the experience that you've already discussed. Okay. Quite often people talk about applying theory to practice, and I think it's wrong as a metaphor because it's kind of surface level. So if you think of applying a plaster or applying paint to a wall, it doesn't really work. You need to think more of a sort of baking metaphor where you're folding it into your own experience and practice. So through the mentorial, use D mode, because you have to use D mode to understand, public theories. We all use personal theories, but use public theories into your own experience. Let the undermined work. It does take time, the results of which, the impacts of which will lead to practice through intuitive practice, but you need to give that a bit of time for that to work. That's the theory around that, okay? Start with experience in D mode, let the undermined work. You've already put the practice in. It will come out as fast mode, as practice, as impact, if you like, but it needs to be given time. Okay. In terms of professional development, I think what this mentoring program does is it allows teachers, okay, it focuses on how teachers learn, really. It's trying to develop learners see, not being told something, but working it out for yourselves. I mean, it's not a massive stretch, right? We tell students to do it all the time. Now, you might say, well, no, hold on, observations are good. Teachers really like it. They like to be told. And I'm going to say, yes, they do. We all like to be told stuff. No one wants to figure it out for themselves. It's painful. It takes time. I get that argument, right? But I think if you really want to develop learners, it has to be done that way. And the ability of teachers to make their own informed judgments. Okay, so that relates to this idea of exercising independent initiative. All right, let me have a look at the time. Crikey. Right, I'll only be 5 minutes. So some initial feedback. So we had some training, actually. We had 3 days worth of training, which was really good, by Angie Maldres, who came up with this mentoring program. She wanted a week, and it was like, well, there's no way we're going to be able to kind of get a week of training. So we had 3 days, which is good. Actually, we did need a week. And then we practiced with each other this kind of mentoring process. And this is some initial feedback from that practice with each other. Now, it's quite general, but that's the whole point, right? Because we're feeding back on experience and we need time for that experience to kind of come out as kind of D-mode language. But there were lots of comments around the value of it, just the value of it, despite initially thinking it was a bit kind of flowery, a bit hippie, whatever, but really valued it. They saw the kind of the unique aspect of this mentoring program and what differentiates it from other structures and processes, including the bottom-up nature, the voluntary nature. So one of the aspects of this mentoring program, it has to be voluntary. The mentees have to want to join. You can't sort of force people to join it. I think it helped to find scholarship focus. It helped me to sort of kind of look at the role of fun more. So as I was doing one of these, I was being the mentee at one point, and I was like, I'm not sure. I think the lesson's a bit boring because of this, and I don't know. Maybe I need to be more kind of fun, go back to my EFL roots a bit. I didn't know. So I started looking at fun, and actually fun is really, really important, right? I think it also has combated or can combat feelings of being in a rut. It really isn't for just new teachers. If you've been teaching for 10 years, 15 years, I think it's more useful, arguably, for you rather than if you're a brand new teacher. I think this links to, is it Huberman's Lives of Teachers, where he talks about if you want to avoid cynicism within teachers and teaching, you need to be constantly tinkering with your processes. And I think this mentoring program will allow for that. Challenges of setting up the program, challenges of doing it. I think we all have our own understandings, our own personal theories of what mentoring is or should be. ideas around, an experienced other guiding, telling, advising, all this kind of stuff. So that's something to be kind of thought about. It's really, really hard to do it. I've practiced being a mentor and a mentee, and it's jolly hard to listen and not offer advice at times. Okay. It's really hard also to avoid hierarchical perceptions, because whilst you can set up a program and not have, your line manager as a mentor, I'm not sure hierarchy is quite that simple. So you might view a colleague as more experienced or working on programs that have more procedure, whatever it might be. So that's tricky. There are issues with workload. I'm currently not workloaded for anything. I mean, I'm the coordinator, joint coordinator of the program, but don't have any workload. I do it because of the love, because I'm interested in it. And there are issues around time, and I don't just mean time for doing it, although people perceive it as time consuming, but actually an hour a week, an hour every other week to go through a mentorial isn't that much of a big deal. We'd probably spend more than that just chatting in the corridor anyway. But it takes time for the impact, if you like, if we're concerned with such things, or the fruits of this to kind of to happen. So it does take time, and I think that's worth kind of bearing in mind. What is needed? Well, obviously, in order for this to be successful, quite a lot of organizational support. Now, I do have some at Leeds, actually. Great. I wrote a proposal, they accepted it, we had some training. They're quite on board with it. So that is important. You need organizational support, and that can be easier or more difficult in different contexts. But there also needs to be sort of support or an appreciation within a broader sense, maybe within Barley, of the necessity or the importance of it, so that specific organizations can kind of lean on that in providing their own support. All right, that's it. I think I'm going to stop there. That's 40 minutes. Matters of apology. So I should stop sharing and open this up to questions and comments. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Gary. No problem at all. I think everyone's transfixed by it. There's lots of interesting discussion about observations in the chat. One of the questions, we had the chance to talk to Gary in Crete, so we're going to hand it over to you. But Dave Watton's asked one is, how are you defining learnacy? People, can you add questions in the chat? Because there's quite a lot of people in here, so we might not see raised hands.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think Claxton says more on that. So go to the source for a more in-depth kind of understanding of it. But learnacy, in the same way that I would talk about literacy or numeracy, it's like the ability to learn, and there is an autonomous nature to that. So how can you learn for yourself? That's essentially what I'm saying.
I said I would turn the discussion off in case people want to come back.